When Lily told me she was going on a girls' weekend to Seattle, I barely blinked. In fact, I think I even encouraged it. Sounds like fun, I'd said, trying to sound upbeat. I kissed her on the forehead as she packed a weekender bag that looked more styled than functional. You deserve it. She smiled, that quick flash of teeth she gives when she's distracted. She was barely listening. Her attention was on her phone, the endless buzz of texts and notifications. I watched her out of the corner of my eye as she typed something, then locked the screen like it was a reflex. I told myself not to overthink it. She left that Friday morning with a quick hug, a breezy love you, and the scent of her perfume lingering in the hallway longer than she did. The silence afterward was strange. I stood in the kitchen with a half-made cup of coffee, trying to shake the uneasy feeling I couldn't quite name. For the first time in a long time, I felt alone in my own house. And not in a peaceful, relaxing way, more like I'd been left behind by something I couldn't stop. Still, I didn't question anything. I tried to shake it off. I spent the afternoon cleaning the garage, one of those projects I kept putting off. I ordered Chinese food, watched a couple episodes of a show I'd been behind on, and even poured myself a beer. The evening passed in that sort of half-pleasant numbness that comes from pretending nothing's wrong. The next morning, everything changed. I was on the couch, cup of coffee in hand, mindlessly scrolling Instagram stories while our cat, Milo, circled my legs for breakfast. I wasn't even paying attention until I saw the familiar username, one of Lily's friends from college. Sarah. The one who always posts too much. And then there it was. Just a flash, a short clip, probably no more than 5 seconds. I almost swiped past it, but something made me pause. In the video, Lily was sitting at a sleek, modern-looking bar, cocktail in hand. Her head was tilted back in laughter, a kind of laugh I hadn't heard in months. It was full, carefree, the kind of joy that only shows up when you feel entirely at ease. And next to her, there he was. A man. Mid-30s, maybe? Clean-shaven, good posture, tan blazer, the kind of look guys wear when they want to be noticed but not obvious about it. His body was angled toward Lily, and his hand was resting casually but possessively on her waist. That wasn't the kind of touch you give someone you just met. It wasn't the kind of gesture friends make. And then I saw the caption. Best moments are when you're near. With a heart emoji. I stared at the screen, frozen. My thumb hovered over the replay button, but I didn't need to watch it again. That 5 seconds was enough to open a door in my mind I didn't want to look behind. And it wasn't even Lily who had posted it. That's what K** led me. She hadn't meant for me to see it. If it were up to her, I never would have known. The story disappeared a few hours later. But the image, that stayed. It dug into my thoughts like a splinter you can't quite pull out. I tried to tell myself it was innocent. Maybe it was a misunderstanding. I mean, I've been around people who get handsy when they drink. Maybe it was nothing. But you know how you can tell when something's off? When you don't even need the facts, your gut just knows. I waited until the afternoon to call her. I tried to keep my tone light. Hey, I said, you having fun out there? She sounded relaxed. Almost too relaxed. There was music in the background, the clink of glasses, some laughter I didn't recognize. Yeah, it's been great so far. We did a wine tasting this morning and now we're grabbing drinks downtown. Sounds nice, I said. Hey, random question. Who was the guy next to you at the bar last night? There was a pause. Just a second too long. Oh, she said, a short laugh slipping out. That? He's just a friend of Sarah's. We ran into them at a cafe. He was just being goofy. Nothing serious. Goofy. She used that word like it would shrink the moment into something harmless. His hand was on your waist. Another beat of silence. Then, calmly, like she was explaining why the sky was blue, she said he was just posing for the picture. It was a joke. Don't overthink it, babe. The thing was, her voice didn't shake. She didn't stammer or get defensive. She sounded practiced. Rehearsed. And that's what hit me harder than the photo. I know Lily. Or at least, I thought I did. I know what she sounds like when she's flustered, when she's lying about forgetting to pay a bill, or when she's nervous about something. But this wasn't that. This was composed. Too composed. It was like she already knew I might call. Like she'd prepared the lines in advance. I didn't push it. I said okay and let the conversation drift into safer waters. She told me about the Airbnb, the view from their balcony, some inside joke about Sarah tripping on a sidewalk. I laughed when I was supposed to. I said I love you when she did. But inside I felt something break. Not explode. Not crash. Just snap. Quiet and clean. Like a thread that had been pulled too tightly for too long. I hung up, set my phone down on the kitchen counter, and just stood there for a minute. I stared at the fridge, the magnets, the wedding save the date from her cousin we hadn't RSVP'd to yet. I felt like a man slowly waking up from a dream, one where everything looked familiar but felt off. Because deep inside I knew. There was a world outside of me where Lily smiled differently, laughed more freely, touched strangers like they were old memories. A world I wasn't invited into. And for the first time in our 5-year marriage, I realized something I wasn't ready to face. I was no longer the person she saved her best moments for. After that call, I stood there in the kitchen for a long time, just staring out the window at our backyard. The light hit the grass in that golden way it does late in the day, but it didn't feel warm. It felt artificial. Like I was standing on a set, playing the role of husband while someone else lived the real version of my life. I stepped out onto the back porch and sat down in the old wooden chair we bought at a garage sale our first year in the house. It creaked the same way it always did. I remembered Lily hated that sound. Said it made her feel like we lived in a haunted house. I hadn't thought about that in months. That's when the fragments started coming back, all the little things I'd brushed off as nothing. You know how, when you break a vase, the pieces scatter, but later you find one tucked behind the couch or lodged in the rug? That's how my memory felt. Pieces of us hidden under excuses. Lily had been busier for months. More gym time. More happy hours. More art exhibits I apparently wouldn't appreciate. And each time I asked to tag along, just to spend time, not to crowd her, she had a reason why I shouldn't. It's just the girls, or it's a work thing, or you wouldn't enjoy it, I promise. I used to believe her. But slowly, her me time grew into whole evenings and then whole weekends, just like this one. She changed her phone password a few months ago. At first, it was because her phone auto-locked while she was driving and it was annoying. I didn't even question it. That's how much I trusted her. I started noticing how she kept her phone on her at all times, even to the bathroom. No more phones charging on the nightstand. No more casual glances at her screen when a notification popped up. She'd just pick it up, flip it over, and slide it into her hoodie pocket. If I asked who she was texting, she'd say just Sarah or someone from work. I didn't want to be the suspicious husband. I hated those guys, the ones who thought every smile meant something, who couldn't handle a woman having her own life. But then one night, maybe 2 months ago, she came home late. It wasn't the lateness that bothered me. She texted, said they were getting dessert. It was the lipstick. A smudge on the collar of her beige wool coat. But not her lipstick. Lily always wore a soft rose color. This one was red. Bold, dramatic. It was small, just a faint smudge near the collar, but it caught my eye as she hung her coat up. I asked about it and she laughed it off. Sarah wore that obnoxious red again, she said. We hugged goodbye and I guess it got on me. I wanted to believe her. I told myself it was fine. People hug. Lipstick smears. But it wasn't the lipstick that stayed with me. It was the way she said it too quickly, like the answer was already waiting in her mouth. A couple weeks later, I caught her smiling at her phone while she was making tea. Not just smiling, grinning. The kind of grin I hadn't seen directed at me in a long time. When I stepped into the room, she jumped, locked her phone, and said, "Oh, just a funny meme Sarah sent me." Sarah again. It started to feel like Sarah had turned into this convenient ghost. Always there, always off-screen, always providing cover. I wasn't sure what was more insulting, the idea that Lily might be lying to me or the fact that she thought I was too dull to notice. Then came the laptop incident. It happened on a Thursday. She was rushing to get ready for her book club, another event I'd been uninvited to. You wouldn't like this one, she'd said with a wink. It's all wine and gossip. I smiled, kissed her on the cheek, and watched her grab her purse and fly out the door. She left her laptop open on the couch. That never used to be strange, but now it felt like a crack in the wall. I didn't touch it, not at first. I just walked by, glanced at the screen. She hadn't closed her browser. One of the tabs was open to a restaurant's website. A panoramic rooftop place in downtown Portland. The kind with floor-to-ceiling windows, mood lighting, and a wine list that could bankrupt you. I hovered over the tab. Reservation for 2. Friday night. 7:30 p.m. Name. Lily Evans. I hadn't made those plans. I told myself maybe it was for her and Sarah. Or maybe someone's birthday. But Lily hated heights. She never wanted to eat anywhere above the 2nd floor. That night, I didn't say a word. Couldn't. The truth was starting to feel like a boulder pressing on my chest. But I wasn't ready to let it roll. Instead, I started keeping track. Not like a detective or a stalker. I didn't trail her or install anything. I just watched, paid attention, listened to the way she spoke when she came home from meetings, looked at the shoes she wore for errands, Noticed the new earrings she didn't mention buying. The way she started sleeping facing the opposite side of the bed. I even started checking our bank account. Small purchases. Drinks. Ubers. Venues. 2 tickets. 2 drinks. 2 entrees. 2 people. The more I saw, the quieter I became. I stopped asking questions. I think on some level I wanted to see how far she'd go. How long she'd keep pretending we were fine. I began to fade from her orbit. She didn't notice. She didn't notice when I stopped texting her during the day. She didn't notice when I stopped kissing her goodnight. She didn't notice when I said I was going out for a beer with a friend, and then came home 3 hours later without a word. I was testing her, seeing if she'd ask. She didn't, and maybe I should have been angry, but mostly I just felt hollow, like I'd been slowly erased from her life, stroke by stroke, and now I was watching her redraw the page with someone else's face. The thing is, I wasn't looking for proof. But proof has a way of finding you when you stop trying to lie to yourself. It was around 10:30 at night on the 3rd day of Lily's girls' weekend. I'd been walking around the house like a ghost, tidying things that didn't need tidying, folding laundry that wasn't mine. The kitchen smelled like her lavender hand soap, but even that felt distant now, like a memory I didn't trust. I hadn't planned on doing anything. Honestly, I was trying to respect her space, let her have her weekend. But that photo wouldn't leave my mind. That man's hand on her waist, the ease in her posture, the way she laughed, like nothing was out of place. I wasn't even mad. Not yet. I just needed clarity. Something real. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I called the hotel she said she was staying at. Took me 3 tries to work up the nerve. I stared at the number on their website like it was a loaded G***N. My hand shook slightly when I tapped call. The line rang twice before a young-sounding woman answered. "Hi, this is Carly at the Evergreen downtown. How may I assist you?" I kept my voice calm. "Hi, yeah, I'm just trying to confirm a reservation. My wife, Lily Evans. She should be checked in." A short pause. "Yes, Ms. Evans is a guest here. Would you like me to transfer you?" "No," I said quickly. "That's fine. Actually, can you just confirm? Is she staying alone?" Another pause, this one longer. Her tone shifted just slightly when she said, "The reservation is for 2 guests. 1 king bed." I don't even remember how I ended the call. I think I mumbled a thank you, maybe even a have a good night. When I hung up, I just stood there, phone in hand, staring at the dark window. My own reflection looked unfamiliar. Blank. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat down at the dining table and listened to the clock tick. I guess the universe wasn't done. The next day I got mail. Actual mail, a small, nondescript envelope slid through the mail slot like any other piece of junk. No return address. No markings. Just my name in small black letters. Eric. It was the kind of envelope people use for wedding invitations or birthday cards. But this one had weight to it. Something flat and stiff inside. My stomach twisted before I even opened it. I tore the seal slowly, my fingers shaking slightly. Inside was a single glossy photo. Lily, in that same red dress from the rooftop reservation, sitting at a candlelit table, leaning forward with her hand on top of someone else's. His face was turned just enough for me to confirm what I already knew. The same man from the bar photo. The hand on the waist man. The not just a friend guy. They were holding hands, laughing, staring into each other's eyes like no one else existed. At the bottom, in neat, printed text, were the words, "Your wife chose one night with another man, and it cost her everything." That's when the tears came. Not a sob, not a breakdown. Just this slow, hot stream that slid down my face like it had been waiting for permission. I didn't wipe them away. I let them fall onto the table one by one. I set the photo aside and just stared into nothing. Everything around me blurred. The walls, the kitchen, the sound of cars passing on the street, it all became background noise. The kind of silence you only hear when something inside you dies. I didn't know who had sent the photo. Maybe someone who saw them and felt guilty. Maybe one of Lily's friends with a conscience. Maybe even someone trying to hurt her through me. I didn't care. All I knew was that I had stopped needing to wonder. There it was, the truth. Delivered in ink and pixels. Tangible. Final. And still, I didn't confront her. Not yet. It's weird how betrayal works. You think you'll explode when you find out. Flip the table. Punch a wall. But sometimes the pain is too clean for that. It doesn't rage. It seeps. I didn't eat that day. I couldn't. I tried making toast, but the smell of it made me nauseous. I tried watching a movie, but I couldn't focus. The only thing I could do was replay everything. Every moment. Every lie dressed up as honesty. I sat there and remembered the first time I met Lily. At a friend's barbecue years ago. She wore a sundress with sunflowers on it and told me my jokes were terrible, but then she laughed anyway. I remembered the night I proposed, how her hands shook when she said yes. I remembered her falling asleep on my chest during thunderstorms. I remembered loving her more than I thought I was capable of loving anything. And now all of that existed next to this photo. I couldn't go back to not knowing. That night, I pulled out the old suitcase from the closet. The one we took on our honeymoon. I didn't know why. I just needed to do something. I unzipped it and stared inside at the faint smell of old shampoo and sand from a beach I'd forgotten the name of. I closed it again. She texted that night. Said she was tired, that she'd be home late on Sunday. Added a little heart emoji at the end. That same emoji from the caption in the story photo. I stared at my phone and didn't respond. Instead, I walked outside and sat on the back porch. The air was cold, but I didn't feel it. I wrapped a blanket around my shoulders and looked out over the lake. It was still, like glass, reflecting the gray sky above. I thought about all the stories I'd told myself to explain her distance. Stress. Hormones. Work. A rough patch. And maybe all of that had been true for a while. But now I realized I wasn't just living through the slow death of a marriage. I was living with a stranger. I had all the proof I never wanted. And yet, the hardest part wasn't that she had cheated. It was that she had smiled while doing it. Sunday morning crept in like fog, slow, gray, and quiet. I opened my eyes to a ceiling I barely recognized. The bedroom looked the same, but everything felt wrong. The curtains Lily had picked out with little gold rings. The print of wildflowers above the bed. The candles on her nightstand untouched for weeks. The air in the room felt heavy, like it didn't belong to me anymore. Maybe it never had. I got up, padded to the kitchen in bare feet, and made myself a cup of coffee. Not our usual French press, just a quick, no-effort brew. The kind of coffee you drink when you need to feel human but don't have the energy to pretend you care about taste. I sat at the table. The same table we'd eaten hundreds of meals at. Pancakes on Sundays. Chinese takeout on rainy nights. Birthday cake slices when we didn't feel like going out. I traced a faint knife mark in the wood. I couldn't remember when we made it. I looked down at my hand. My wedding ring still sat there. A simple silver band. It used to feel like a promise. Now it felt like a joke. An inside joke I wasn't in on. I slipped it off. No ceremony, no drama, just slid it off and set it in the center of the table like a returned item. A receipt-less refund for 10 years of loyalty. It didn't even leave a mark on my finger. I think that's when I realized I'd already left her, not physically, not logistically, but emotionally, spiritually. Whatever had connected us had already snapped, quietly, sometime between the rooftop photo and the phone call where she told me I was paranoid. She thought the end would come with a fight. But it came in stillness. I looked around the house. Everywhere I turned, I saw her. Not just her presence, her choices. Her taste. Her rhythm. From the throw pillows on the couch to the lavender hand soap by the sink to the curated book stack on the coffee table untouched except for the one title she'd opened for show. It was like I'd moved into a museum of someone else's preferences. 7 years in this house and I couldn't find one space that felt like mine. I opened the closet. Her clothes were lined up perfectly, color-coordinated, spaced evenly. Mine were a footnote, pressed into the corner. Shirts I hadn't worn in years. A couple old jackets that smelled like dust and silence. I reached up to the shelf and pulled down an old shoebox, one I hadn't touched since we moved in. Inside were a few scattered things from my old life. A baseball cap from college. A photo strip from a fair before Lily. A keychain I bought on a trip to Colorado with my brother. Things that didn't match our aesthetic. Things she always said looked messy. I set the box on the bed and sat next to it, letting the memories wash over me. I remembered that version of myself, the guy who wore scuffed boots and didn't check his hair in the mirror before leaving the house. The guy who listened to punk rock in the car and stayed up too late talking about nothing with friends who didn't care about curated flatware. He'd been gone for a while, replaced by a quieter version. A version who asked permission before buying new towels. Who learned not to mention certain friends because they don't vibe with her energy. who slowly gave up little pieces of himself in exchange for peace. That version was done. I started folding clothes. Not hers, mine. I pulled out shirts I hadn't worn in years, ones she called too graphic or too teenage. I didn't care. They felt like me. I packed them neatly into a bag and set it by the door. It wasn't a dramatic gesture. I wasn't leaving that day. I just needed the act of preparing. The symbolism of it. I opened a drawer and found a pair of beat-up sneakers I used to wear when I'd go on long walks just to clear my head. They still fit. Still felt like mine. I tied the laces and walked out the door. No note. No text. Just a walk. I wandered through the neighborhood past the familiar houses with their wind chimes and dog-eared mailboxes. I saw Mr. Reynolds mowing his lawn like he did every Sunday morning. He waved. I waved back. Nothing felt real. I ended up at the lake. The same lake we used to visit when we first moved here. Lily always wanted to take pictures of the water at golden hour. She said it made her feel centered. I stood by the edge and looked down at my reflection. My face looked tired, but also lighter. I sat on a bench and just let myself be. I don't know how long I stayed there, but when I finally made it back home, the sun had shifted and the light in the house looked different. Warmer. Or maybe just honest. I started making small changes. Not out of pettiness, out of reclamation. I pulled down the framed print in the hallway she'd bought from a gallery downtown, the one she said brought balance to the space. I replaced it with an old black and white photo of my grandfather on his motorcycle. It wasn't stylish, but it was mine. I tossed out the lavender room spray and replaced it with cedar. I moved my books to the living room. I even changed the Spotify password. It wasn't revenge. It was restoration. I wasn't sure what I'd say when she came home. I rehearsed a dozen versions of the conversation in my head, ranging from calm to volcanic. But none of them felt right. Because the truth was, I didn't want to argue. I didn't want to hear excuses. I didn't even want an apology. I wanted release. Around 5 p.m., my phone buzzed. A text from Lily, "Be home in an hour. Can't wait to see you. Red heart." I stared at the screen. I didn't respond. I brewed some tea. I grabbed a book. I sat on the porch and waited, letting the evening fold in on itself. She arrived just as the sun dipped behind the trees. Her car door shut softly. She walked up the steps with a kind of lightness that made me sick. She opened the door and stepped inside like everything was normal. She stopped. The ring. The clean closet. The changed scent in the air. The shift. She called out, "Eric?" I didn't answer. She walked through the house slowly, her heels clicking against the hardwood. When she saw me sitting outside, she opened the door, her face confused. "Hey," she said. "What's going on?" I looked up from my book. "Nothing." "Did something happen?" I sipped my tea. "Depends how you look at it." She paused. "You're acting weird." "No," I said. "I'm just not acting anymore." She blinked, unsure of what to say. I motioned toward the table behind her, the tray with the ring. "You forgot something." Her eyes followed the gesture. When she saw it, her face changed. Just slightly. But enough. "Eric," she said slowly, "can we talk?" "You can talk," I replied. "I'm done explaining why I feel the way I feel." She stepped closer, suddenly defensive. "If this is about that picture..." "It's not about the picture," I interrupted. "It's about everything that came before and after it." Her jaw tensed. "You're being unfair." "No," I said, standing up. "I've been fair for a long time. Fair to the point of losing myself." She looked around as if seeing the house for the first time. Her voice dropped. "I was going to tell you everything. But you didn't," I said. "And that's the point." She didn't argue. She just stood there, suddenly small in the doorway of the life we built. "I need space," I said. "Real space. Not the kind you ask for so you can disappear into someone else." Her eyes filled with something I couldn't name, regret, maybe? Or just the realization that the version of me who would fight to keep her had left the building. "I'm sorry," she whispered. I nodded. "I believe you. But that doesn't change anything." She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just sat down on the porch steps like she didn't know where else to go. And I realized then that this wasn't the moment she broke my heart. It was the moment I stopped letting her. I didn't sleep much that night. Not because of racing thoughts or some desperate spiral of what-ifs. No, it was something quieter than that, a kind of internal rebalancing. Like my body and mind were finally aligning after months of pretending. The house was quiet, but this time it didn't feel ominous. It felt honest. At around 6:30 a.m., I got up, showered, and put on a shirt I hadn't worn in at least 3 years. A faded navy blue one from a band I used to love, one Lily once said made me look like a college kid trying too hard. I wore it anyway. I pulled open the bottom drawer of my dresser and grabbed an old pair of boots, scuffed, broken in, familiar. I laced them up slowly, letting the motion ground me. Then I picked up my keys and left the house. I didn't tell Lily where I was going. Honestly, I didn't know myself. I ended up downtown. There's this cafe on 3rd and Maple, a narrow little place tucked between a used bookstore and a dry cleaner that hasn't changed its neon sign in 2 decades. I used to go there all the time when I was single. Before Lily. Back when I wrote short stories in spiral notebooks and people watched over burnt coffee and day-old muffins. I hadn't set foot in that cafe since we got married. But when I walked in that morning, it was like time folded in on itself. Same mismatched furniture. Same barista with the piercings. Same faded chalkboard menu with new specials written in crooked script. I ordered a black coffee and sat by the window. Outside, the city was just waking up. Cars pulling into meters. Buses wheezing past. A woman walking her dog in mismatched socks. The world moved on, completely unaware of the collapse I'd just lived through. And somehow that felt reassuring. I took out my phone and opened my contacts. I didn't know why at first, but my thumb hovered over a name I hadn't seen in years. Jenna. We dated briefly in college. Nothing dramatic, no painful ending. Just life moving in different directions. She moved to Chicago, I stayed here, and time did its thing. I don't know why I messaged her. Maybe I just wanted to talk to someone who knew a version of me that hadn't been diluted by compromise. I typed, "Hey. Random, I know. Was just at that cafe we used to hit after psych class. Made me think of you. Hope life's treating you well." I hit send before I could second guess it. I expected nothing. Instead, a few minutes later, my phone buzzed. "Jenna, Eric? Wow. That took me back. I still dream about their burnt scones sometimes. How are you?" That message cracked something open in me. Not because I wanted to run back to her. It wasn't about rekindling anything. It was about remembering that there were once people who knew me before I became the man who filtered himself to fit someone else's comfort zone. We messaged for over an hour. Nothing heavy. Just memories, jokes, the kind of light-hearted connection that doesn't require defending. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I smiled. A real one. The kind that doesn't feel borrowed or suspicious. After I left the cafe, I wandered the city. I walked past the bookstore where I bought the first gift I ever gave Lily, a copy of The Bell Jar, which she never read but kept on display. I walked past the music venue where I used to volunteer. I ducked into an old record shop and picked up a vinyl copy of an album I hadn't listened to since college. One Lily said gave her a headache. It didn't give me a headache. It made me feel alive. By the time I got home, the sun had started dipping behind the trees and the house had that soft, amber glow we used to call magic hour. Lily wasn't there. She'd left a note on the counter. Went for a drive. Needed to think. Didn't want to bother you. I read the note twice. Then I folded it, tossed it in the recycling, and went to the living room. I played the record I bought, loud, unfiltered, and laid on the couch like I used to on Saturday mornings back when I didn't care about volume levels or disrupting someone else's yoga playlist. I stayed like that until the record stopped spinning. And in that silence, I realized something strange. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't numb either. I was just free. I wasn't waiting for a text. I wasn't worried about a location ping. I wasn't scanning her face for signs of lies. I wasn't even hoping she'd come home with some grand apology. I didn't need closure. I already had it. It had come in waves, through coffee, old music, quiet messages, and long walks. Through finding the corners of my life that hadn't been touched by her. That night I made dinner for myself. Something simple. Chicken and rice with way too much garlic, the way I liked it. The way she didn't. I ate in silence and then cleaned the dishes. I lit a candle. Not lavender. I didn't go into our bedroom. I slept on the couch not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I liked the couch. I liked the way the air felt different down there. Honest. Clean. I drifted off sometime after midnight, not thinking about where she was or who she was texting. Not because I didn't care, but because I finally understood something. I couldn't save a version of us that only existed in my memories. I couldn't unknow what I knew. I couldn't rebelieve the lies she'd whispered in a calm voice. I couldn't shrink myself down again to make space for a stranger. And I wouldn't. I had been too far too often. Now it was time to stand upright again, uneven, awkward, a little unsure, but fully, unapologetically myself. In the morning, I'd start sorting out the logistics. The money, the house, the next steps. But that night, all I needed was to remember what it felt like to belong to myself.